So we are now on to chapter 16, making good progress now. Three more chapters to go, and then we have to start all over again. That's what they say. Mukta was telling me they say that Gita never ends. When you finish chapter 18, you go back to 1, right, Gita? I mean,
Yeah,
Mukta, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But we'll do something else though. That'll be more fun.
I can do that also.
Okay. So, chapter 16 um, is very, it's so funny. I was just thinking about it. If you look at the different chapters of Gita, they almost seem like very separate episodes. you know, from chapter 15 is has a very different feel to it, and then chapter 16 is suddenly talking about very different things. So, chapter 15 was all about overview of the knowledge and overview of Karam Yoga and cognition, and it was like high philosophy. And chapter 16 and 17 is really down to earth. It's about what are the gunas that should be there in human beings, those who are pursuing this path. What values should they have? Right? It's very prescriptive. So the way that Swami Paramathananda introduced this, he was it was very interesting. He said that the Gita says that our main problem is ignorance, correct? That's why we have sorrow. Why do we have sorrow? Raga, and moha, and all of that. Why do we have these things? In shoka, we have sorrow, we have desires, we have confusion. All this happens because we don't have knowledge. We don't have self knowledge. We don't know who we are. We don't know that we are complete already. So we're looking everywhere, looking to complete ourselves through other things, through other means, and those things are by nature temporary, and they come and they go, and that gives us sorrow. We develop attachment to those things, and that is the cause of sorrow. So the answer to this, because this is based on ignorance, the problem is ignorance of ourself. So the answer is only one, that's knowledge. So he's very clear, even Shankaracharya is very clear that you cannot solve a problem of ignorance through action. You can't say that I'm going to counter my ignorance through effort. If you don't understand something in physics, you can't work your way to understanding. You have to get knowledge. Someone has to tell you what you don't understand, or you have to use your eyes and ears, etc., and find out. So the answer is knowledge. And what kind of knowledge? The answer is self knowledge. That is very clear. But if you go to the Upanishads, there are many statements which say that the way to get knowledge is through your mind. So you need your mind. Any knowledge, the instrument for knowledge is mind, manas or buddhi. Basically two parts of the same thing. Manas is antakarna, whether you call it manas or you call it buddhi, depending upon when you're talking about knowledge, you'll call it buddhi. When you're talking about emotions, you'll call it manas. But you will use your mind, antakarna. But then there are Upanishads which also say you can't reach knowledge through the mind. Like for example, Kane Upanishad, which is what we should hopefully study next. It says yat manusa yan manasa na manate. That means that which cannot be reached by the mind. Or na tatra chakshura gacchati, na vach gacchati, na mana. Right? It's basically saying you can't reach there with the mind. So Swami Paramathanand asked this question. He said, how do you resolve this? That on the one side you say, if you have to have knowledge, the only instrument you have is your mind, your antakarna. But on the other hand, you say this is beyond the mind. Like what does this mean? How do you resolve this? So his the resolution that Shankaracharya gives to this is that the ordinary mind, which is you pick a person off the street and say this is self-knowledge, tell him, is not going to get it. The ordinary mind will never be able to understand what self-knowledge is, or the contents of that I am Ishwar, Tattvamasi, these things the ordinary person will not be able to understand because that mind is not ready for it. What you need is a mind, but you need a refined mind. You need a mind which has been prepared, which is sensitive enough and perceptive enough and prepared enough to understand this. The ordinary mind is beset with ragas and dveshas, all kinds of random thoughts, desires, things like that. But you need a prepared mind. So therefore, when we study Vedanta, the preparation of mind is a very big part of the whole exercise. And in fact, like Swami Paramathanan gives the example of cooking food. He said, when you have to eat food, to quell your hunger, you can only eat food, only then your hunger will be taken care of. But in order to have food which you can eat, you have to prepare the food. So he said the preparation of the food can take a long time. Sometimes you have to marinate stuff overnight. Sometimes you have to ferment it overnight. You have to cook for hours. But he said eating is just like, once the food is there, you eat it. You're done in like a few minutes. So eating is what will satisfy your knowledge. And that doesn't take much time as long as the food is ready. But if you give someone like raw wheat or raw rice, he can't eat it. He'll say, no, 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 eating doesn't do anything for me because it's not, it won't work. So he said similarly, the preparation of the mind takes a long, long time. 95% of the effort, or in fact, actually 99% of the effort is the preparation of the mind. But to a prepared mind, knowledge is very easy. It doesn't take much. So, what are the means for preparing our mind? How do we prepare our mind? And here, Swami Paramathananda again, he says that typically the means, if you think about the Vedas as a whole, the Karam Kand and the Gyan Kand and all the whole thing, he says what Vedant talks about is about the knowledge, Brahma Vidya. That's what the Upanishads mainly focus on. They focus on the knowledge. You'll see they don't focus much on Karam Yoga, for example, which is a means to getting the knowledge. Karam Yoga is a sort of a transitory thing. It's kind of in the we're talking about Karam. We're talking about action. So the center of gravity of the Karam Yoga is the Purva part of the Veda, the Karam Kand. That's where all the karmas are. So in Karam Yoga, for instance, they say you should do your duties. It's all there in the earlier part, not in Vedanta, in the earlier part of the Vedas. Similarly, when we talk about Ishwar and Dan, all the good things, it's all in the previous part of the Vedas. The only distinction is that when we talk about Karam Yoga, we say when you do all these things which are prescribed in the Purva part of the Vedas, do them without an expectation of result. Do them with the result being, I want Anta Karna Shuddhi, that's why I'm doing it. You might be doing the same things which are prescribed in the previous part of the Vedas. Before you went on to this quest, you might be doing it to gain Swarg, to gain happiness in this world, to gain various desires that you have. All those are good reasons to do these things. You may be doing your duty because you want a good life after this life. You want to be born in a good family. You want to go to Swarg. So it's the same things that you will be doing in Karam Yoga, but in your mind, you know now, it's not the Swarg I want, it's Anta Karna Shuddhi that I want. So that my mind is ready, so that I can get knowledge. My aim is no longer Swarg or wealth or relationships or anything else. My aim is moksha. My aim is knowing and understanding myself. So yes, you can say that Karam Yoga is sort of gap between bridges between the early part of the Vedas and the latter part of the Vedas, which is the Vedant. So you can see some relationship to Vedant, although the center of gravity of Karam Yoga is not in Vedant, it's in the Purva part of the Vedas. But what he says in chapter 16 and 17 is totally in the Karam Kand. It has nothing to do with Vedant. Okay? Because what he now says in chapter 16 and 17 is that in order to actually even do your Karam Yoga properly, you need to have certain gunas. You need to have certain, he calls it Daivim Sampatti and Asura Sampatti, the two different things. So you need to have Daivim Sampatti. You need to have right values. Values like ahimsa, dan, things like this. This is, you're not going to find this much in any Upanishad or anything like that. But they are essential because what Gita does is Gita says, I'm not going to assume that you have a prepared mind. I'm not even going to assume that you are ready even for Karam Yoga. I'm going to go and say, what are the things that you need to inculcate first in yourself? What values are there which will help you even become a Karma Yogi? So Gita goes deep down, and you see the structure of Gita is chapter 2, he talks about the big picture. He talks about what is the Gyan, what is Karam Yoga. Like he's right away he talks about the Natve Vaham Jatu Nasam. Like I was never I was never born, I never die, nor will you, nor these kings. He goes to the heart of the wisdom. And then he talks about Karam Yoga too, like the essence of Karam Yoga. What is Karam Yoga and what do you do there? Then as he goes deeper into the Gita, he goes more into the detail because basically when you say that at the top level, some people get it. They have no questions. They say, I'm done. And that's okay, that's enough for you. You don't need to go to the next part of the Gita. But Arjun wasn't done. He had lots of questions. So every time Arjun asked questions, Krishna Bhagavan went deeper into the subject matter and into more detail to kind of say, okay, you didn't get this, let me go one level lower and let me take you from there, and so on. So he kept doing that. If you see all through till chapter 18. So when it comes to 16 and 17, he's left Vedanta, he's gone into the Karam Kand. And he's talking about um, the qualities that a person needs to have, the values that a person needs to have. Okay, so that is the preamble to chapters 16 and 17, because you'll see the difference in the tenor and the difference in the content of those chapters. But there, it's very very useful. It's very useful for all of us because it's a it's sort of a, you could say, a guidepost, some sort of a roadmap for us to look at our own self and see, do we have these values? Are our values different? Are we showing these values in real life or not? Okay. Did you understand the context? I mean, any questions so far? Nothing new here, right?
Yeah, so
Right.
regarding that, you said so the mind needs to be prepared to take in the knowledge of, well, basically the self,
Right.
Brahman.
Right.
But the mind, by definition, is a limited instrument and the self is limitless. So, how can the mind ever comprehend what the self is, no matter how prepared it is?
No, so it's not a question of comprehending. You can never comprehend it. You can never understand it the way you understand other things, like an object. So that is a basic thing. It's we are talking about the subject, not the object. So we are not talking about that. We are talking about what is the instrument that receives the vritti. Like for example, there's something is limitless. The Brahman is limitless, right? You understand that Brahman is limitless. How do you understand this? How do you know that Brahman is limitless? You didn't see Brahman. Someone told you, right? And what was the organ or what was the faculty that received this knowledge and understood this fact that Brahman is limitless? Your mind.
The mind.
Right? You
Yeah.
have no other way of knowing. We human beings have no other faculty. We have our senses and we have our mind. So as far as the initial knowledge is concerned, there is no other faculty. If you say that the mind can understand, then nothing can understand because we have nothing else, right? So the mind definitely can't understand Brahman as an object. And you'll see that in the Kane Upanishad. I think you've done the Kane Upanishad too, if I'm not mistaken. And we talked about it earlier too, that Brahman is not something that can be understood as an object. Because you try your best, you'll find that there is someone who's trying to understand, and that someone is you. So there will always be somebody trying to understand something else. So you can only understand something else. You can't understand.
Yeah, so that's what the problem is, because the claim is that after a certain period of doing karma yoga, you will have a prepared mind which can take in the knowledge.
But
But
the prepared mind is not going to become limitless, right? The claim is that
yeah, so
the prepared mind can do the introspection necessary to understand why it can't understand, or to understand how to access Brahman. Not that it understands Brahman, it will understand how to access Brahman. So, for example, let's say I tell you that the Brahman can be known as the knower. Brahman can be known as the one who's trying to know. And in every vritti, in every knowledge, in every cognition, Brahman is present. So you can't search for Brahman as something outside there, you. Brahman is present in everything. Understanding this requires a prepared mind. If I tell this to an ordinary person just like that, that person will be quite confused. And his mind will go in various different directions. He'll have all kinds of doubts, he'll have all kinds of issues. He won't be able to focus on what is being said. But a prepared mind, right, which has been groomed, will be able to understand this. That that Brahman can only be known as a subject. It cannot be known as an object. A mind that's not prepared will be looking for different kinds of exercises, meditations, techniques, samadhis in order to look for Brahman. That is the sign of an unprepared mind. That's how we've all been there. We all have done that at some time or the other. We've all we've all gone through that process. The prepared mind is one that truly understands that Brahman is not an object. So when Upanishads, all the Upanishads are telling you this, that they're saying Brahman is always known. There's never a time when Brahman is not known. So how do you sort this out in your mind? That's what a prepared mind can do. Okay.
yeah, got it.
Huh? It's it's basically not that you will ever know Brahman. Never can a limited mind, like you said, know the unlimited. But never can the mind become the unlimited. So that way the mind will never know. So what the prepared mind does is it is able to focus. It's able to focus on what I just said. It'll be able to focus on it. It'll be able to understand the import of that statement, and then stop looking outside and stop looking within. In other words, stop looking for Brahman and know that I am Brahman. I don't have to look for Brahman. I am Brahman. That's the only way I know I'm Brahman, by knowing that I am Brahman. And then, as Swami Paramathanand says, claim that you are Brahman. Don't search, claim, because you are Brahman, right? And that claiming is very difficult. It's not easy to claim because when you claim that you're Brahman, you have all kinds of doubts. No, 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 no. How can I be Brahman? I can't be Brahman. Brahman is such a big thing. I'm just an ordinary human being. How can I be Brahman? I like that kind of thing. So, a Shuddha Antakarna doesn't have these issues. A Shuddha Antakarna has its ego in check. So the ego won't spring up with all kinds of objections and all kinds of problems and all kinds of issues, all kinds of anxieties which it springs up. And actually, what we are going to talk about now will clarify this even more because it's now Krishna Bhagavan is telling Arjun even more emphatically or even more clearly what it means to have a Shuddha Antakarna from a values perspective and how you work towards it. Okay? So let me share. You guys can see it, right? So straight away, chapter 15 ended by he told Arjun, the one who understands me as the Purushottam, who understands Shar, Akshar, and all that, reaches me. So that's where chapter 15 ended. And suddenly, all of a sudden, from there, he goes to chapter 16 and says, he starts talking about these um, gunas, or not gunas, these values, what he calls sampad. So Daiva Asura Sampad Vibhag Yoga, that's the name of the chapter. So Daivim Sampad is, Sampat means wealth, Sampatti. And Devi means good, that which will give you good things, good luck, good blessings. Asura is, what Asuras are, right? They are the opposites of Devtas. There's a constant war between the Devtas and the Asuras. Asura is a person who's completely not interested in self knowledge, is only interested in material consumptions, just wants to enjoy and partake in pleasures without morals, without dharma, any of those things. So there's Asura Sampatti, that means wealth or properties or values which take us towards Asuras, and Deva Sampatti, that means those values which take us towards Devas, which is towards Sattva Guna, towards enlightenment. And again, we'll go through these, but the important thing to remember is that it's not as if a person has, some people are have Deva Sampatti and some have Asura Sampatti. Everybody has both. We all have all of these things. What Krishna Bhagavan is trying to say is, strengthen the ones which are Deva and negate the ones which are Asura. Okay. So what are those? So he says Abhayam. Abhay is the first one. I'm going to give you a list of 26, which he has kind of uh, talked about right up front. I made a note of them. So the first one is Abhayam. So Abhayam, then Sattva Sanshuddhi, Jnana Yoga Vivasthiti. That is the third one. So Abhayam, you know what that means? It means fearlessness, right? So Swamiji calls it freedom from fear. Here, you can read it from here. Freedom from fear. Then Danam, which is charity. Damaha. Damaha is like is restraint. Damaha means not going running after material pleasures and sensual pleasures all the time. Having a degree of restraint and control on yourself. That is Damaha. Then Yajna, which is religious discipline, right? Which is actually more like doing the rituals. Yajna is a ritual. So do all the rituals that you have to do. Swadhyaya is study of the Vedas. And here Swamiji says study of your own branch of the Vedas, not you don't have to study all the Vedas. Nobody can study all the Vedas, right? And then Arjavam. Arjavam means being straightforward. So I'm going to quickly take you through all of these just so you know what they are. And then we are going to step back from here. And we are going to see how we can look at them in a more uh, sort of how we can cluster them and make sense out of them. Okay? Because again, Swami Paramathananda pointed this out. He said these are not special qualities. If someone asks you what are the right things to do, it's common sense. Everybody knows what they are. We all know. We all know that speaking the truth is good and lying is bad. We all know that being kind to others is a good thing and hurting others is a bad thing. So all these things are all known to us. The reason why Krishna Bhagwan has given all these is to kind of, just in case just in case we need help, just in case we say, okay, it'll help me if I know exactly what I should be doing, exactly what I should not be doing. So he's spoon feeding us, but it doesn't need to. And it's not as if this 26 is an exhaustive list. Okay. It's essentially you have to use your common sense. Okay. But this is just like giving you illustrations so that you can actually use your common sense. So Danam, Damaha, Yajna is rituals, doing the rituals that are prescribed to you. So in those days, everybody was supposed to do some nimitta karmas. Those are rituals which have to be done every day, like Agni Hotri ritual and things like that. Or Surya ritual bhi hota tha. At Sandhya times you have to do a Surya Namaskar, that kind of all those rituals. Then um, okay, then we talked about Swadhyaya. Tapaha. Tapaha is also, austerity. Don't be extravagant with yourself. Live an austere life. Arjavam is straightforwardness, not opposite of crookedness. Then ahimsa, which you know, right? Non-violence. Satyam. that means truth, speak the truth. Akrodha, that means resolution of anger. So this is an interesting one. He, Shankaracharya describes this not as not being angry, but he says, you can't, not being angry is a matter of willpower with limited success. He says you have to resolve the reasons for your anger. That's what akrodha is, resolution of anger. So if you get angry, there's a thought which has occurred to you which actually triggers your anger. There's something which happens in your mind. We forget that thought. We just notice the anger. But actually there is a thought. When a situation occurs, certain triggers, they bring about a particular thought in your mind. It could be a thought of fear. It could be a thought of some past injury. Typically, it has to do with the past or some assumptions about people. So, when you are in situations, certain situations will trigger that thought. And the moment that thought comes, anger follows. So, resolution of anger means trying to understand what is that basic thought in you which is causing the anger, what's underlying it, and then working on that thought. How can I how can I resolve that thought? In fact, one of the techniques that Swamiji had given for this, he called it pratipaksha bhavana, not just for anger but even for abhayam. Pratipaksha bhavana means again under fear also there is a thought. When you are afraid of something, there's a thought underlying that fear, and the thought could be a thought of some loss or a thought of some past loss or a thought of death. Some thought will be there which has triggered your fear. Pratipaksh bhavana means being able to identify that underlying thought and then use your knowledge to say no, that is not right. Do it consciously a few times. Counter that thought using your knowledge. It he calls it Swami Dayanand calls it build an antibody. So that when that happens, when that thought comes back again, the countervailing thought also comes to your head. So that's called pratipaksha bhavana. So it's a technique that you can use to counter some of these automatic reactions that we have of fear, of anxiety, of anger, all of these things. I mean, use anything that works, but these are just examples or things, ideas given to you. Then tyaga, which is renunciation, a life of renunciation. So tyaga, as we know, is not about renouncing the world. It's about renouncing ownership, doership, all of these things which feed our ego, renouncing those things. Then shantihi, which is, you know, in here, uh, shanti, he says, is a resolution of the mind. Just like we said, resolution of anger for akrodha, he says shanti is a resolution of the mind. When your mind is restless, which is ashanti, again there's a thought. And I've noticed that in myself too. Sometimes, I spend the day feeling restless and I realize something happened in the morning. Some news I heard, something was there which has triggered this mood change in me. And once you identify what that was, that can help you in resolving that mood change. So it's again resolution of ashanti is what is shanti. Because shanti and akrodha are your natural state. You don't have to do anything to get there. If you're not there, there is some thought which is preventing you from getting there. Identifying and resolving those thoughts is what is meant by these values. Then apassionam. Apassionam means it's the opposite of passionam. Passionam is talking ill of others or reveling in the unhappiness of others, gossiping about others. Oh, उसने ये करा, उसका वो हुआ, ये हुआ. You kind of, in a way, it's a way to make yourself feel better that the other person is in a worse state than I am. So not indulging in that kind of activity is an important value, a daivim sampat. Then daya, which is compassion. Then bhuteshu aloluptvam. So Aloluptvam means um, a very, very strong desire or longing for something. So not having that. Then Mardhavam means softness, softness and attitude. Uh, Softness and attitude means you are approachable. Anybody who wants something from you can come to you, or anybody who wants to talk to you can come to you and not feel I'm going to be criticized or I'm going to be judged or spoken harshly to. That is called Mardhavam. So that's another important attribute mentioned here. Then Hri is a sort of a it's a Hri is kind of like modesty, but what it really means is not um, not projecting yourself, not always talking about how good you are and things like that. That is Hri, and so that means in a way you can say being modest. And achapalam, that means physically staying calm, like you're not agitated all the time, you're doing, you're not mindlessly doing things, you're not restless physically, even physically you're calm. So there again, Swami Dayanand said that some people just sort of habit, they're like shaking their leg or moving their arms around, making wild gesticulations. He said be aware of it and slowly they will go away. So it's like if you bring a calm to your body, it'll translate to a calmness to your mind. Then Tejaha, Kshama, Dhruti. So Tejaha, brilliance. And this is actually, it was described here. Um, Tejaha, he said, is actually the capacity to face challenges with composure, with confidence. That is Tejaha. So it is brilliance if you just look at the dictionary meaning, but really the implied meaning is that when you are facing any issue, when you are facing a challenge, an obstacle, you can self-confidently go ahead. It doesn't shatter you. It doesn't break you down. That is Tejaha. Then Kshama is composure. So Dama and Shama are kind of related, but different. So Dama was having restraint in what you do, what you say, what you want, not following your mind blindly. You like something, you just go grab it, right? Having restraint, using your buddhi, using your intellect to see, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right time to do it? Is it appropriate? Understanding what is appropriate and doing that is what is Dhamma. Kshama is when somebody else has done something to you, you don't react automatically. So if someone says something bad to you, you don't just right away react in anger and say something bad back to them. Because kshama means being accommodative, to accommodate the other person. So a person who doesn't have shama will take everything personally. Oh, that person got angry at me. That's an attack on me. How dare he or she, right? That'll be the attitude. A person who has shama will have an attitude to say, this is not about me. This is about that person who's losing his or her cool. Maybe there are some reasons why this is happening. Maybe that person has had a bad day or had some loss or had some other issue. So let me stay calm and let the event pass. Let the person's reaction pass. That is Shama. So both are about restraint. One is restraint from your own initiative, and the second is restraint as a reaction. Okay, so these are two properties which are also given in the Shat Sampatti. The Sadhana Chatushtaya, Shama and Dama. Then um, Dhruti. So Dhruti again is like fortitude, right? It's here, fortitude. Um, not being uh, not being afraid, not panicking. That's Dhruti. Then Shaucham is cleanliness, purity, mental purity and external purity, both. Adroha is is kind of like ahimsa, but even more. So ahimsa, when it is not explained, when both are given, adroha and ahimsa, ahimsa means not doing anything to hurt others. Adroha means not even having that thought. Just the thought of hurting others is also gone. There's no reason for you to even think bad of others. So you don't have to use restraint. When you have when you think badly of others, you want to hurt the person, but you use your restraint, that is ahimsa. Ahimsa. Ahimsa can be either, but this is how it is used in the Gita. So adroha means not even having a bad thought. And nati manita. Nati manita means na ati manita. Ati manita means having, you really, really want people uh, to respect you. Manitvam. We talked about it in chapter 13, where you have such a high opinion of yourself, you want people to respect you, to give you that respect. In America we often say, respect. We deserve respect. We are going to get respect. If there is no one respects me, I will not go there where nobody respects me, that kind of a thing. So that is a very early stage of a person's maturity. Eventually what you want to do is not not have that kind of a feeling that I deserve respect, I need to have respect. If you respect yourself, you're not going to require others to respect you. The others will respect you anyway, but you don't need to require others to respect you. And that is what is called by that is what is meant by na atimanita. Natimanita. Okay. So these are the 26 qualities. I don't want to spend too much time on them because they are very common sense. There's nothing here. But what I want to talk to you about is how Swami Paramarthanand has clustered these into six major buckets. And if we can remember those six, I think we'll get the meaning, the gist of all of them. So let me stop this. I'll share those six, and then we can talk about it. We can discuss, okay? So the first thing he said for values for a successful sadhak, there's a why these values are given is because over time people have found a correlation between those who have these kind of values and those who are successful in their spiritual quest. There's a correlation. So the first set of things he talked about is called self confidence. He said a person who wants to be a good karam yogi needs to be self confident. If you're not self confident, if you're always harboring doubts about yourself, you got to figure out why that is so. Because self confidence is a prerequisite for moving in this field. So if you had success in your life so far, generally speaking, in whatever goals you set for yourself, you've had success. You would have developed a healthy ego. You would have developed a healthy respect for yourself. You would not be full of self doubt. That kind of a person is the right person to go for, as the right mindset to go for self knowledge. But if you find that you've not been successful in life at all, and because of that you have so many doubts, so many issues, then you are going to struggle mightily in in self knowledge too, in the spiritual field too. So anxiety, fear, Abhayam he was talking about, all these things are the opposite of self confidence, self doubts. Certain amount of doubts and skepticism is absolutely essential. It's a good thing. But you have to judge, is it too much? Like, do you feel I'm on this journey, but I will never reach moksha. It's beyond me. you know, I will never I will try a little bit, I'll go to the next step, I will never go anything further than that. I know. How can I, such a limited being, ever reach something like moksha? You have to examine that. Like, if someone else can reach, why can't you? What is it that's making you feel that you're lesser than that other person? Truly examine that and see, is that really true? Just because someone has more capability in a particular area, is more skilled, is more rich, or whatever, does it make that person more qualified? Or You have everything you need to gain qualifications. Even if you don't have the qualifications, there's no reason to think that you don't have what you need to gain those qualifications. You have confidence, I'll gain the qualifications, then go get those qualifications. That's the attitude that you need when you are on this journey. So that's why Swami Paramathanand put this as his number one, self confidence. Okay. Then number two, he says is self mastery. This is all relative. You can't master yourself completely. But all these things we talk about, Shama, Dama, Akrodha, all of this, control over your senses, control over physical agitation, control over mental agitation, all of that. That's all about mastery on yourself. Are your thoughts coming to you at random and there's nothing you can do about them? Because at the end of the day, it's thoughts. What is anxiety? Anxiety is a flow of thoughts on which you have no control. You don't want those negative thoughts, but they are just coming. They're just gushing. There is nothing you can do. You're helpless in the face of those thoughts. That's anxiety. So there are many techniques which are there in the Gita and outside for helping you gain self mastery. But go for it. If you have the self confidence and you go about it in a structured way, you will gain self mastery too. So that was his second uh, bucket. Then his third bucket was self integrity. And what this means, it's actually, again, things like Arjavam is applies directly here. Self integrity means having alignment between what you're thinking, what you're saying, and what you're doing. They should be in same aligned way. That is self integrity. For example, if you think and your knowledge tells you kindness is a good thing, I should be kind, but your speech and your actions are unkind, then you don't have that integration. People call such a person crooked because he will say, or you'll say one thing and do another. That's a crooked person, a manipulative person. And maybe the reason is not that you want to manipulate, but the reason could be that you are incapable. You find yourself incapable to do what you think is right. And you know why that happens? Like, what's the cause? The cause is raga dvesha. The cause is desires. When you desire something so much, even when you think and know that it is wrong, you still can't help yourself. You'll go after it. Because that kind of a desire, a binding desire, which makes you feel like if I don't get this, I will not be happy, is a root cause for not just lack of self integration, but for a whole bunch of things. So that is the third bucket. The fourth bucket he calls is purity, which is kind of like, you know, he says anybody, if you think about all the thoughts that happen to you in a day and you say, all your thoughts, everything is now going to be made public. People are going to know everything that you're saying. What percentage of the thoughts are you going to be comfortable with? And what percentage are you going to be very uncomfortable with? And that is a reflection of purity. And he says, remember, God knows all your thoughts. So even if you hide it from others, you can't hide it from God. But anyway, that's the point. So try to understand for yourself. It's kind of a gauge for you. Uh, is it possible that you be comfortable with 100% of your thoughts if others know them? The fifth bucket, he says, is humility. He says you can have all of this, and then if you have a huge ego and you think that's no end of yourself, you're proud of yourself, then you got a problem. Because this control over your ego is a prerequisite for knowledge. You cannot be proud and seek self knowledge. The two just don't go together. Self knowledge is about finding what is common, the common denominator between you and everybody else. That's self knowledge. Because the self is the same in everybody. So between you and everybody else, between you and God, between you and the devil, there is something which is the same. So there's no, you can't have ego in there. Ego means I'm different, I'm better, or I'm worse, whatever it is. So humility is sort of the first step to getting there. So that's why he calls it out as a separate bucket and says there are a whole bunch of things like nati mani tuam, right, which I talked about the last one, then renunciation, things like that, which are about humility. And the final bucket that he gave is called compassion. And there again, we have daya and so on and so forth. He said compassion is a big help because because when you are compassionate towards others, it helps with everything. Humility, straightforwardness, purity, all of that helps with compassion. And if you're not compassionate, if you're not kind to others, you cannot be kind to yourself. And if you're not kind to yourself, you will not be able to resolve the issues that you have within yourself. So compassion is an absolute must for your own sake, not for the sake of others alone. For your own sake, you need to have compassion. So these are the six things. And I think, I mean, if you can remember them, they can be good guideposts for us. But these are now the first three shlokas of the chapter where he's mentioned all of these things. Okay. So I think this is quite a lot for today. We can, if you have any questions, we can talk about them. We can discuss them. But that's kind of how the chapter starts, and then he explains later on in the chapter as to why these are important, and how different kinds of people and so on and so forth. But it's not not what you would be used to as Vedanta, but still important stuff. Okay, any questions or any comments, anything else?
Does he talk about how to achieve these values? Like, when you mentioned earlier about thoughts just coming,
Right.
that's just
I think
how
Krishan Bhagwan doesn't talk about it
Mhm.
necessarily in this, but Swami Dayanand or other commentators like Shankaracharya have talked about it, and they have talked about these things like Pratyaksha Bhavana,
Yeah.
which is basically a lot of what they say is about uh, objective analysis. And so there are two things that they say from what I remember. One is that objective analysis, trying to understand what is the thought which is causing these problems. If you first of all, they say you have to understand that these values are the right values.
Mhm.
Swami Dayanand explains this very nicely. You have to cognitively know why these values are right. You shouldn't have any doubt about it. Like you shouldn't have any doubt, why do I need to have ahimsa in order to continue in my journey? Like there should be no doubt. Why do I need to be straightforward? Why do I need compassion? So the first step is to make sure that you are absolutely clear. Because if you're not clear, then determination is hard. Then Swamiji says, if you're clear, you think about it all the time. You you look back, like Sanjay used to say, at the end of the day, look back and see how did I behave? Did I behave in accordance with my values? If I didn't behave in accordance with my values, next time I will behave. Why did I not behave in accordance with my values? What can I do to change it? And that's where the Pratipaksha Bhavana comes in. Like what caused me to divert from my values? What was it, the underlying reason? There's always an underlying reason which can be traced to a raga dvesha, can be traced to a desire. Um, Identify that and see how you can resolve it. And next time, try to catch yourself. That's the only way. Um, that's the way Swamiji also has said to kind of go about doing these things. But at this point, I'm not sure that, like, and he's given these 26. and the six buckets that Swami Paramarthanand is given, like you be in your mind, you need to be sure that why they are necessary. Because they're necessary to be a Karam Yogi. And Karam Yoga is necessary to be a Jnani. You know, how you can you see that chain clearly in your mind without any doubt. That's the first important thing.
So, Dheeraj, how does all this stuff we talked about today, how does that intersect with the Antkarna Shuddhi that we studied earlier?
See, because the Antakarna Shuddhi is all of this, all these things, the right values, the right actions, Karam Yoga, Dhyan, all of these are designed towards, or their objective is Antakarna Shuddhi. So, what does Antakarna Shuddhi mean? Antakarna Shuddhi means not having uh, binding desires. That is what is definition of Antakarna Shuddhi. That means you have mastery over your mind. Like if you want your mind to go in one direction, it should go in that direction. If your knowledge or buddhi tells you that's what I want to do, or I want to focus on Gyan, I want to meditate on Brahman to understand exactly what it means when people say Brahman cannot be known as an object. To feel it within myself that okay, this me is Brahman. That requires you to have a sustained amount of introspection on the matter. Your mind should be able to say, okay, I will introspect. And you can introspect without interruption. But if the mind is not in your control, that is called an antakarna ashuddha mind. That is called a mind which has antakarna shuddhi. Because it has no agenda of its own, which will otherwise the mind can have an agenda of its own. Our minds typically have agendas of their own. They have these little desires and things and anxieties and fears which draw us away from the task at hand and which causes anxiety. And because they causes anxiety, it is hard for us to sit and say, part of the thing is when you're contemplating, you should feel the satisfaction, feel the peace that we say comes from us. That mind will not feel the peace because it is so agitated. Or it'll have these things which it's drawing yourself to. So that is a mind which is not shuddh. That mind will not understand and be have conviction about um, my true nature as Brahman. So for that mind, all these values are suggested. And you'll see, like I was telling Kiki also, if you find that you believe ahimsa is right, but you find you catch yourself doing hinsa, being violent, then you analyze it, understand it, you'll see that the reason for it is some ragadvesha, some impurity in your mind, something which is forcing you away from implementing what you think is your value, what you believe is your value. So all of these things help you get to a state of antakarna shuddhi. This is a direct way, but even indirectly it helps you. That's the idea. This whole exercise, this whole huge portions in the Gita, in fact, actually they say even the whole of the Karam Kanda of the yoga of the Vedas, their ultimate goal is antakarna shuddhi. Like why should you do your duties? Because they'll give you antakarna shuddhi. You'll sacrifice something, you'll learn to sacrifice, and you may not be able to see, oh, how is that helping me? Why, if I don't run after, instead of doing my duty, I do what I want to do, I just indulge myself in doing stuff which is contrary to my duty. Why would that not give me antakarna shuddhi? It won't, because what it will do is it will just continue to fuel your desires. So that's why they say, like, do your duty. That's why the scriptures say, do your duty. Do your rituals. That also is the same thing. If you say ritual is my duty and I have the discipline, I'm doing rituals every day Like, I remember once I got a WhatsApp post from some army general or something in one of his speeches to his troops. He was saying, you want to have self discipline? Start by doing your bed every morning. Like, just do your bed every morning. First thing, get up, make your bed. Because, first of all, it'll inculcate a sense of discipline. And secondly, you will start with a little success. You'll feel good about it. So things like that. Duty has the same effect. When you do your duty and you know you've done it right, it 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 feeds that part of you which is saying, I want to do the right thing. Anyway, I mean, I think I'm speaking to the I'm carrying coals to Newcastle. You guys are very familiar with all of this and very mature and intelligent, so I don't need to say all this, but this is what the Gita is saying.
But this whole notion of having control over your mind, it uh, does, I don't know. Does that really, I mean, the thoughts come as they come. I'm not sure that we have much control
Mhm.
over thoughts.
I'm pretty sure we don't have much control. That I know.
Yeah.
That is not a difficult assumption or a big leap, but that the control is important, that is what you need to understand at this point, that it is important to have control.
We have the potential to have control. We just need to exercise it by training it.
Of course, you should have the self-confidence to know that yes, self-control over my mind is absolutely possible and you are more than capable of achieving it by
I think I'm
training
trying
or
to
whatever means.
understand why it's necessary. I think I'm just
That's
trying to
the first
understand why
question.
it's necessary because,
That's the first question.
if you can have an objective, if I feel that if I can inculcate more objectivity towards the thoughts that do come in my mind, that I can understand the need for. But to change the content of what comes in my mind, I don't understand why that is
it's
necessary.
it's not to change the content of what comes in your mind. It's to make sure that your mind can do what you think is right. What your buddhi tells you
Yeah,
is to be
yeah,
done, your
yeah, I
mind can do.
understand that.
But if thoughts are random, they come all the time, then you will not be able to do those things. I mean, if you find in your life that you are able to, it's totally fine. Like I said, this is not, we are veering away from Vedanta a little bit. We are
Yeah,
getting into the Karam Kanda part,
yeah.
right? So you have to make your own decisions on it. Personally, I have come to understand that self mastery is extremely important in a very practical way. That if I don't actually have discipline in my life, um, then a lot of these things are, then a lot of my progress is only in my mind. you know. Anyway, but that's all personal.
Yeah, I understand
What do
that,
you
but
think,
I mean,
Rajiv and
this
Mukta?
is the reason that we have this
Right,
discussion.
right.
Is
Yeah, yeah.
to,
That's what I'm saying. What do these guys think?
I mean, personally, I find a lot of value in terms of spending time on certain kinds of thoughts versus other kind of thoughts. Because as you know, you can't really manage and control what thoughts come to you. But I think you can control what thoughts you want to develop on, right? Whether it's related to Vedanta or not, right? Or I think you can control that particular element, or maybe filtering some of that. So that's something that I've found very helpful. Is you know changing randomness into some structure around, okay, this is where I want to spend some time thinking about it. Where do I spend my time?
Mukta, anything to add?
No, nothing much to add, but I was also thinking what he and Rajiv were saying, it is very difficult. Yes, it is difficult. You sit down for meditation also, I mean, you just can't control. Thoughts keep coming and coming and coming. That's there.
Deepraj, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I like this quality of Tejas, like brilliance. It's it is a brilliant quality to have. It's like you're constantly shining. It's like the light of sattva shining through you. It's a nice way to picture a very poised person. Like you say
Being
they're
confident
glowing.
to tackle obstacles, not being led astray or knocked off course
Yeah.
because of obstacles.
Yes.
That's what Tejas is.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you look onto that person as a pillar. It's like a very
You can put it in your WhatsApp status.
yeah. It's like that quality of Arjavam that was mentioned earlier in the Gita.
Right. Here also Arjuna was mentioned in the first or second verse. What else? Kiki, anything else? Shall we call it a day?
Is the word Arjun derived from
Yeah,
Arjuvam?
yeah,
Is the same root?
same root. Yeah.
And what is the root? Ah must be like a
No,
so.
no, it was I forget now. Drew. Last time मैंने तेरे को बताया था when you asked me.
I think I
Uh,
also.
I've
Anyway, never
forgotten
mind.
now.
It's okay.
That's like, I mean, I'm still, there's so many of these, it's hard. It'll come to me suddenly.
Yeah, yeah.
I've forgotten at the moment.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. All right, guys. We'll see you in
Okay.
2 weeks.
Okay.
Bye.
There's
Thank
going
you.
to be more of
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
this,
bye.
okay? So, like, chapter 16 and 17 is kind of like this only. So, just so
Good,
you know.
good.
In the 17th, he actually talks about he takes all of these and then he defines them as what is the sattvic, the rajasic, and tamasic of each of them. So, he's just going into the detail.
We need Sanjay for these classes.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully he'll be here.